Who's the stupidest person you've ever met, and what story perfectly sums up their stupidity? Story 1. There was this guy in my high school that wasn't too bright and was mostly harmless, but about halfway through decided he was going to be a thug. One day he goes into a class of first years when their teacher wasn't there and robs all their electronics, cash, and valuables at knife point without covering his face, and before he left gave them his real name, saying, "And you better not tell them it was me, Jim Conrad, that stole all your stuff." He then proceeded to leave school grounds with all the stolen stuff, but decides against stashing it off campus, and so came back with all the stolen stuff in his backpack and went back to spy on the class with his backpack full of loot while police officers were taking statements to make sure they weren't ratting him out. Edit for those who want the end of the story, but it's too buried to find. The kids all rat him out, and when he hears his name, he steps into the class proclaiming he'd gut them if they didn't take back saying he did it, with all the officers still in the class and all his loot on his back. He was expelled and arrested, and when word got out, our year group, everyone just facepalmed. Edit 2. I don't know why he's so stupid, but it wasn't an isolated act of idiocy. It was quite well known by everyone in my year group how dumb he was. In fact, he didn't even qualify for admission, but his family called in a ton of favors to get him in on recommendation. Story 2. This girl I went to school with thought Earth had 2 moons and adamantly argued with me and a teacher. Edit, I should have included more information, but I am new to this, so I apologize. The girl thought that there were 2 moons of the same size, one on each half of Earth. She thought that the Earth didn't rotate while in orbit. She also thought that since the sun was so big and bright that it blocked the moon during the day. None of anything she said made sense, and she would not answer any further questions or follow up with any rebuttals. I did not try to make her feel stupid. I don't like doing that to anyone for any reason, and once I saw how set she was on what she believed, I backed off because I'm not one to force any views, beliefs, facts, or opinions on someone. And I never said that I don't give my opinion or views, or that I don't present facts. I do. I will always say what I have to say, but after a certain period of time when a conversation comes to a complete standstill and nothing is getting through to a person, I do choose to walk away, and I do so knowing that I tried my best and nothing I can do will be effective. Yeah, sometimes no matter how much you want to help inform someone, nothing you say seems to get through. As the song says, you've got to know when to hold 'em and know when to fold 'em. Story 3. I knew this guy in high school really thought his practical jokes were hilarious. He would just do stuff designed to pee you off, thinking your salty reaction would make it funny. You may be thinking, this guy's a D, and you'd be right, but he's also incredibly stupid because every time someone said, "Dude, effing chill out with your BS," he just blew it off. Social stupidity, I guess. Well, one day he knocked this kid's hat off his head. These guys were friends, but clearly there was some hostility. Other kid picks up his hat and tells Pranker to F off. Pranker smacks his hat again. Other kid tells him if Pranker knocks his hat off a third time, he'd knock Pranker's head off. Pranker has a crap-eating grin, completely oblivious to how dead but serious this guy was, and got absolutely clocked in the face when he effed with this guy's hat a third time. All he could say was, "What the F, man? Chill out!" But no one was willing to hear him out. Story 4. I worked with a man named Roy. Roy had theories about how to live life, Royconomics. One day he turned to me and the other member of the crew. "You boys want to know how you get nice things?" he asked. "You go to the store and you finance everything. New furniture, new appliances, television, stereos, everything. Then you don't make any payments and you don't show up for your court date. They'll end up garnishing your wages, but they take way less than the payments would have been. Then, about a week later, you boys want to know how to buy a house? You apply for every credit card you can possibly get. You take out your entire balance in cash from all of them, and you use that for your down payment. Then you don't make any payments, and you don't show up for your court date." For people thinking that they may know this specific Roy, I last saw him 10 years ago. At that time, he was in his early 50s, was rocking a gray/blonde skullet, and lived in a hamlet in the province of Saskatchewan. Story 5. Guy in my aircraft technician class. I'll call him Jim. The module at the time was about electrical power. We were having a review one Friday before the exam started. Earlier that week, we had covered the batteries used on the aircraft, what types, how they were constructed, etc. Trainer turns to Jim and asks him about the different types, expecting him to say, lead acid, lithium ion, and so on. Nope. Jim thinks for a moment and says AA, AAA, C. When we got to the hangar for work experience, the same trainer had lost all faith in Jim. We were all assigned jobs in the morning. Me and another guy on wings, couple more on landing gear, all down through the group. Then he gets to Jim, placed an A4 sheet of paper on the ground and told Jim to stand on it so it didn't blow away. We all laughed, Jim included. The trainer was joking, right? He wasn't joking. Jim stood there all day. I mean, I want to say that the trainer's job should be trying to find ways to help Jim, but at the same time, I have no idea just how bad Jim was. Frankly, I've known a few Jims I would have liked to have act as paperweights, so I can't blame him. Story 6. The first time I met Ben was at Improv 101. He was only taking the class for fun, but about half the people there were aspiring actors, including Ben. On the first day, the teacher had us all play this silly game to break the ice, and so we'd all remember each other's names. The rules are pretty simple. 1. Pick an adjective that starts with the same letter as your first name. 2. Introduce yourself using adjective plus first name. And 3. Do a simple gesture that goes with it. So everyone is going around the circle introducing themselves as Daring Daniel and Lonely Lauren and Awesome Alex until we get to Ben. He introduces himself as Surfer Ben. He proceeds to misunderstand at least one key element of every gamer exercise for the rest of the class. I have no clue how this man functions in daily life. He has since managed to get a few featured extra roles on TV, though. Improv is hard, but you want to know one of the most important parts of improv? Listening. Ooh, Ben, I've got bad news for you. Looks like you might need to hang 10 on out of that class, buddy. Story 7. Guy I worked with named Buddy bought a huge Snap-on rollaway toolbox for over $3,000 on credit. 2 days later, he sold it to a coworker for $1,500 because he had some overdue bills and had to pay them. Needless to say, he never paid Snap-on for the toolbox. He was off into the winds after he was fired for starting his fourth fist fight at work. One of the other guys I worked with told the Snap-on salesman where Buddy's new job was, and last we heard they are now garnishing his wages. Guy was a nutcase, though. He had very thin skin, and the slightest thing would set him off. He goes absolutely nuts when he was set off, though. He yelled at the security guard and threatened to have him fired because he didn't like his tone. He almost got fired 3 times for fighting, but he was also able to win the department manager over until the 4th time. Oh, and one time he was told to put caution tape across a malfunctioning gate, and he said, "I don't know how." Story 8. My ex-husband. We were playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who had to go change the baby best 2 of 3. Round 1, I throw scissor and he throws rock. "I win," he proclaimed. Round 2, I throw paper and he throws rock. "I win," he says again. Paper beats rock," I tell him. His response, "No, rock beats everything." I spent like 5 minutes trying to wrap my mind around this. Finally, I ask him, "Then what's the point of even playing?" In total sincerity, he says, "To have fun." Clarification edits. 1. No, sadly, he was not trolling me. He was completely serious. I know it's hard to believe, but in all fairness, he was born and raised in Florida. 2. Yes, I changed the baby. I did pretty much everything involving the baby after that. 3. As for my own level of intelligence and that of my son, I think he said it best himself when, at 4 years old, he said to me, "Daddy can't help. What's your excuse?" I was about to make a comment, but then I looked back at the first sentence of this story. My ex-husband. I can't say too much about your intelligence level, but I see you made at least one good decision. Story 9. My mom's cousin was the getaway driver when his friends held up a 7-Eleven. He had some outstanding tickets at the time. As he was driving his moron friends home, he sped past a cop who inevitably pulled him over. He defended his bad driving by telling the cop he was just the getaway driver. Then he got arrested. He has since been arrested for a series of other similarly stupid crimes. He also believes that there's a global cabal of Jews who are out to get him. Recently, he got a DUI, which got his license revoked. This was obviously because of the Jews, and not because he decided to drive drunk past a police station. When he was denied a gun license, that was the Jews at work. I have no idea why he thinks a global cabal would be focused on some moron from Saskatchewan. Roy? Are you back at it? What is up with Saskatchewan? Story 10. I've posted this story before, but this seems like another appropriate thread for this story. One night during high school, my friend and I got invited to a party. I didn't drive back then, so my friend picked me up. All went well on our way to the party. On the way back, however, he got pulled over. As we were pulling to the side of the road, I told him that I was going to pretend to be sleeping since I was the passenger. Anyway, I hear the cop get out of his cop car, walk towards our car, stops at the window, but doesn't say anything. I can feel the brightness of his flashlight, but I don't hear him or my friend say anything. After about what seemed like an eternity, I decided to open my eyes to see what was going on. That's when I see my friend, the guy who was driving, is pretending like he is sleeping too. Story 11. I knew this guy in high school that was a huge idiot. The best story about his stupidity happened when he and another friend got pulled over by the cops. Instead of acting like a normal person, he gets the hilarious idea to step out of the car and proceeds to run as fast as he could down the block. The cops, of course, chase right after him, not amused at all. He gets a couple of blocks away and decides to turn around, put his hands up in the air, and screams, "Psych!" The cops, of course, did not find any humor in this situation and tackled him to the ground and arrested him. Keep in mind this was before YouTube prank videos, so he wasn't doing it to gain subscribers or anything. He did it because he was a moron. Story 12. Had a guy in a third-year undergrad developmental psych course raise his hand in a full lecture hall and ask the professor, "Professor, do infants diagnosed with SIDS get asthma later in life? Like, are they more likely to get asthma?" SIDS stands for Sudden Infant Death Syndrome. He just kept pursuing the question. The professor didn't understand how she could answer it. She thought there was some kind of logic in it that she wasn't seeing. Finally, some girl took the initiative to shout across the room, "No, they are not more likely to get asthma. They are dead. They have died suddenly and will thus not be at risk of developing asthma." Great day. He always sat in front of me, and I would see him writing just absolutely horrible poetry and song lyrics. There is a special kind of frustration you only find in college classrooms where there is one student who doesn't seem to understand just the simplest concept. The rest of the classroom grows more and more frustrated as the teacher tries to comprehend what is happening. Story 13. I once had a property manager, person in charge of the rental I lived in since homeowners who lived out of state, who did a bunch of obnoxious things. My husband and I thought she was greedy and maybe getting money for herself and hiding it from the homeowners for repairs or something like that because of shady-seeming things she would do when we had repairs. Then we mentioned something about gardening. She said, "You know, I've always wanted to try growing tomatoes and just watering them with salt water. That way the tomatoes would already be salted when you ate them." Huge reminder to never attribute to malice what is just pure old-fashioned being dumb as a rock. Story 14. There was a troubled kid I went to high school with. He struggled with school but had friends, but was starting to do drugs and go down a bad way. He decided to photocopy the front and back side of a $20 bill, cut it out of normal paper, and glue the two halves with Elmer's glue. What's even more sad is that to test his new money, he went to the gas station and bought some gum, and it actually worked. So in his mind, it must have meant that it was foolproof. So then he tried to go and deposit the glued up money at an actual bank. He was obviously found out and arrested. I don't know where he is now, but I'm assuming he's making similar life choices. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day. Story 15. Literally had this guy got fired last week for doing this. Whenever a customer would enter the store, he would mimic everything they said. Whilst already bad enough, he would try his best to copy their accent too, no matter what accent it was. Multiple complaints to our store have been made about this guy, and he had plenty of warnings. Well, last week he finally got fired while serving an Asian customer, and in full view of our manager, he says, "Yeah, I'm not an idiot, so I won't be saying that." Got pulled into the office where apparently he still maintained he'd done nothing wrong and couldn't understand why he was being fired. Definitely a dumb butt. Story 16. This one lady at Atlanta's Beer, Bourbon, and Barbecue Festival who clearly didn't know where she was. I'm getting started on this rack of ribs, quietly minding my own business with a glass of beer, when from the group in front of me, this lady comes up to me and tells me how she can't stand the smell of meat, roasted or smoked, and tells me to get away from there. This is despite the fact that the event's name has barbecue in it and she had to pay $40 to get in. After she left, I had a good chuckle and facepalm with another lady at the table, but God, I've never seen more stupid in my life. Story 17. I had a manager named Roxanne, Rocky. She was a bleach blonde, literally bleached her hair once a month and then wondered why it broke/fell out. Bubblehead who only had the job because daddy owned the restaurant. Rocky was really obsessed with her looks and not much else. One day she told me and a coworker that she had her nose job done so that her eventual children wouldn't grow up with the same nose as her. She wasn't kidding. The coworker and I just looked at each other and walked away. Knew it wasn't worth the effort. You don't know. Maybe her nose job was just some CRISPR gene-altering new science. Maybe her children will have perfect noses and, what am I even doing? God, this comment is dumb. Now I'm the dumb one. Oh, I'm sure the one person every video who comments, I wish you didn't do comments and just read the stories, is just loving this. Well, now I'm going to make this comment even longer just to spite you, because I wish you didn't do comments. This is how I do things on this channel, and if you want stories without comments, go read a book, you goober. I don't even remember what this story was about now. Story 18. The dumbest person I ever met was my friend's Uncle Frankie. Growing up, my buddy and I worked in his father's insurance office during the summers. One day, Uncle Frankie comes in to use a computer so he could compose an email. It was the first time. This was in 2009. As he was trying to add the @ symbol in the recipient's name, he asked where he could find it. I told him to hold down the shift button and press the number 2 key at the same time. He turned his head, and with a puzzled look in his eyes, he asked me, wouldn't that be a capital 2? Story 19. I worked on a hay press for about a month. Most guys had high school education. One particular guy was telling me about a girl he was talking to on Tinder or some various dating/chat app. When he said that she was in New York and that he wanted to go visit her. I told him that that's pretty cool and New York will be quite the change from our little town. He then asked me how close New York was. We were in Washington State. He had no idea New York was over 2,000 miles away. Story 20. This girl I used to work with before she got fired. One day she came to work with a broken arm and claimed her boyfriend pushed her during a fight and she fell. We were all super concerned for her until she came in a week later saying she stabbed her boyfriend in the hand during a fight to get back at him for breaking her arm. Then a few weeks later, she told everyone she was secretly trying to get pregnant because if she got pregnant, her unemployed boyfriend would have to get a job and help pay rent. She got pregnant, and her boyfriend immediately dumped her. Story 21. My brother's now ex-girlfriend. Super kind lady. When she found out I was a vegan, she literally went through every kind of meat she knew and asked if I could eat it. It was a little painful. Cute story about the same girl. Anytime we would go on a road trip and she saw cows, she would always softly moo under her breath, even if she was in mid-conversation. First one's kinda just like she was curious and went about it the wrong way, but the second one is pretty heartwarming. I'm sorry, but this woman wins this thread for me. She sounds absolutely delightful, and frankly, I will now also softly moo at cows when I see them. Story 22. My friend's father robbed a bank in a small town in Indiana where he lived. This was in the late 70s or early 80s. He spent 10 years in prison for the crime. The same day he was released from prison, he robbed the same bank again. He was caught, and back to prison he goes. He did not learn in those 10 years not to rob any banks or anything in that matter. My friend was like, this is what every father does, and did not seem shocked over it. Story 23. There was this girl I knew in high school. She would constantly say or do stupid things. Example, she drew a cover page for a unit in science class where she drew Earth and put ground underneath it. Asked, what light bulbs did cavemen use? Argued that she wasn't a Homo sapien because she liked men. Story 24. I have a friend named Rachel. Now, this one night in high school, we all got the munchies and decided to go get ourselves some late-night Sonic. We piled into Rachel's car even though we've heard stories about her bad driving, but that's another story. Anyway, she asks us how to get to Sonic and we proceed to give her directions turn for turn until we finally pull into the Sonic parking lot. Upon our arrival, she smirks and says, "Oh, I work here." Oh, Rachel, you sweet summer child. Story 25. My high school classmate whose name is Nick. We were in chemistry doing a lab practical which required the use of a bulb pipette. A glass pipette with a removable bulb that you squeeze. Nick didn't know how to use the pipette, so he put it into his mouth to suck up sulfuric acid. It got about 3/4 of the way up before our teacher screamed, "Nick, stop that right now!" Story 26. Work with a guy who honestly believes he will not die, also believes that doctors are part of the system and that they lie to you for profit and personal gain. He does believe in Eastern traditional medicine, however, and if you're interested to know his secret to eternal life, it's 6 raw eggs a day and a keto diet. Story 27. Old coworker of mine. He was helping me move, and while we were carrying a couch, he dropped it. Thinking he was hurt, I asked if he was okay, and with the most serious and frightening look in his eyes, he said, pointing, "Look, it's the moon and it's daytime." He was 25 at that time. Story 28. An old coworker named James. We worked at McDonald's and we were both 16. One time, while mopping the lobby, he, for some unknown reason, decided to chase a number of customers around with the mop, yelling, "I'm gonna get ya!" He was fired on the spot. Did something goofy that makes a good story, and got to stop working at McDonald's? I hate to tell you, but I think James is smarter than you think. Story 29. Guy I went to high school with was at a party and asked the homeowner if he could have her tattoo kit. She obviously said no. He left and came back an hour later with a ski mask on, demanding for the tattoo kit. He was arrested the next day. Can't make up that kind of stupidity. Story 30. A guy told me a story about him drunk driving, crashing, and getting his friend in the passenger seat killed. He was chuckling while telling this story. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.